Wendys is offering fresh prizes all season long with that game at Wendys Daily Face-Off Survivor. The game lives weekly on dailyfaceoff.com with weekly prizes and a season-long prize of $5,000 up for grabs. It's simple. You sign up, play, and you get free stuff on the Wendys app. You pick a prop that will happen in a game every day of the week, and the longer you survive with correct answers, the more you can win from Wendys. So while you obsess over your dream team, reward that dedication with Wendys' new obsession, the very real barbecue bacon cheeseburger freshly added to the Wendys lineup. Enjoy the Applewood smoked bacon and crispy onions as cheese melts over the fresh, never frozen Canadian beef. Not going to talk about my results. I forgot to make a pick yesterday, so I'm eliminated from the game this week. But a guy, I wonder if he's eliminated. Joining us now, the daddy over at DFO, the DFO daddy. Do you go by that, Frank? Frank Seravalli joins us.
No, I don't.
You want to?
No, I don't. And I was eliminated on Tuesday night. I had Travis Konechny scoring a goal. He's been off to a hot start. And against the Sharks, I was like, they give up 10. Come on. Travis Konechny, he can get a goal. That didn't happen.
Do the Sharks beat the Edmonton Oilers tomorrow?
I don't think they do. But here's what I want to do to begin our session today. I'd like you guys to roll your head back and go to the left and go to the right and then give it a little shake. Because I listened to both of you talk before I joined. And I'd like to drive to Vancouver or fly there, however I can get there quickest, and slap both of you. Because listen to the conversation you guys were just having. How ridiculous it sounds of where the Canucks are at right now compared to the conversations that we might have been having over any point over the last few seasons. Did I just hear you say correctly that the Canucks might be in trouble if Mark Friedman goes down? Come on. Get it together, give yourselves a head shake, and let's move on. This team is not regressing. The Vancouver Canucks aren't regressing. That's not happening.
Frank, they're not gonna be a 130-point team. So yes, they are gonna regress from their current pace. That's our point. They're not gonna regress too much, but they're not gonna finish with 130 points.
No, they're not. But is it a regression to say that they're gonna be a 100-point team this year?
I mean, no, that's fair. Isn't it technically?
No, it's not. It's not really like, because that's not really what we're talking about. Like,
you're right.
Well, this is a progression from an 80-point
absolutely
team, 80-plus point team to where they're going this year. And here's the thing. I heard you guys talking about position and in the standings and the math required. I actually did some of this number crunching today before joining you, and it wasn't because I knew we would be talking about this, but I was just curious for the Canucks to get in. This is where it begins to get really fun. Because of their 9-2-1 start, they only need 79 points over the last 70 games.
Yes.
To be a guaranteed Stanley Cup playoff team. And so what you're talking about is 564 hockey. And people say, okay, well, that's still something. Like, no. In today's NHL, like, most teams are playing at 625 or more. And they've afforded themselves this luxury now of not sitting back, but you're not going to have your A game every night. And so what they can do is just little milk, squirt, just bank some points, milk away some points here and there. 1 point shootout loss, 1 point overtime loss, whatever it might be. Start stockpiling points. They've done that already, but as the season begins to get long in the tooth, that is the luxury that a 9-2-1 start has afforded them.
Absolutely. One of the huge bounce back performances driving the Canucks' hot start here is Brock Boeser. He's been phenomenal, scoring tons of goals in all situations. And it's funny because you go back to last season and it felt like his name was all over the rumor mill. It seemed like the Canucks were really motivated to get off the contract. It's just funny to think what an alternate timeline where Boeser's doing this on another team and how much that would have stung. Just kind of curious from your perspective, how close do you think the Canucks ultimately were last season to pulling the trigger on a Boeser trade? Because people say the best moves are sometimes the ones you don't make.
I think in this case, it was one that they couldn't make. I think in a perfect reality, the Canucks were so intent and set on trying to find a suitor for him that the contract was getting in the way of them doing something. And he probably would have moved on had his contract been a 1-year deal or whatever it might have been. That's the real truth in the matter. I think what really changed in a big way was Brock Boeser's attitude. And remember how surprised we all were when it was locker cleanout day and he's like, I don't want to be traded. I want to be here. I actually like it here. And it was a really refreshing, confidence inspiring moment. I think not just for Boeser, but for the rest of the group. It was like, hey, this guy's name has been dragged through the mill. And yet he's like, yeah, I like it here. I'm in. His ability and willingness to stick with it through a lot of really tough situations. And not just that, but the off ice stuff that he's dealt with, I think is incredibly impressive and a testament to his character. Because think about it from just a pure on ice perspective, like park the trade rumors, park, the really awful stuff that, went on off the ice for him with his family. And then just look at his game and you're like, wait a second, this guy came into the league as a goal scorer and now all of a sudden can't score. What happened? And to find that touch again, it's hard to do. And he's battled through it and made it out to the other side.
That's an excellent point. And obviously there was the back injury in his rookie year, which does affect your shooting, but he's had injuries along the way as well. So that's a really good point that he had that offseason to, kind of prepare himself. And we know he changed up his training this offseason under the advice of Rick Tocchet. So Frank, really good points. In a similar note, we've heard Conor Garland, we've heard Anthony Beauvillier a little bit lately. Do you get the sense that we're still going to see a trade from the Canucks here?
I think they'd like to try. I think they are also so happy with their start that I think they're probably like, we can wait until the right thing comes along down the pike. And like, look, is their cap structure, even with a 9-2-1 start, perfect or the way that they'd like it to be? I think the answer is an obvious no. When you've got guys making what Beauvillier is and what he's being asked, the role he's being asked to play in, it's a clear imbalance. I think when you look at Garland, I think there's, from his perspective, I'm sure there's, an openness to it. I think from the Canucks perspective, if they could find a way to make it happen, for sure. But Beauvillier is by far, I think, maybe the easiest guy to move from this group, given that imbalance, because of the idea that he's in the final year of his deal. Like, I doubt they're going to be willing to retain because that defeats the purpose. But if there's someone out there that feels like they might be able to flip rehab Beauvillier into something else, because of the spot that he's been sort of mired in Vancouver, I think maybe that's where there might be an opening. But again, not to say they're content. They're always looking. I think they're hungry to do something to, further improve this team and improve that cap flexibility and situation. But he sort of stands out also as the guy that they kind of like the least.
Frank, where do you think Rick Tocchet has had the biggest impact for this team's turnaround?
Harm, I would say structure, 1, and I would say 2, mentality, approach, and compete. I think some of those things go hand in hand. When you compete, obviously your structure looks better, but also like the hard part to figure out, and we've given Rick Tocchet tons of credit, and I would never take away from that, because I think he's a huge part of this turnaround. But the other part of this that goes part and parcel to the Canucks' success this season has just been personnel too. Changing out that defense core and taking away fringe NHL players from your 3 to 7, spots in your lineup defensively, that's going to make a huge difference. But I think the biggest thing that stood out from the Boudreau era was structure, habits, practices, defensive zone, play and compete. And then Also, like, little thing that I think has stood out in a big way has been body language. I'm a big believer in that. And if you watch that clip over and over again of Jonathan Huberdeau on the bench last night in Calgary, like, it was almost kind of a lesson in what not to do if you're ever in a spot where you're benched. He just looked so low and lacking confidence. That's kind of one thing, like posture, body language. Like, this Canucks team has had some juice this season. And yeah, results are a big part of that. But like, how you think about the season, what you're being told, what your coaching staff communicates and thinks of you, like, all those things, they all matter.
Posture, body language, and juice. That's the Canucks' next season ticket video. They had a season ticket. I don't know if you knew this. Trying to sell season tickets. They called it structure, accountability, habits. Those were the three things that they highlighted. And there was even a clip, I think it was Miller, saying wins and losses don't even matter right now. And everybody flamed them in the offseason for that. But hey, their structure, accountability, and habits have been very good to start the year.
It's all about the little things. Like, here's a little thing I would work on with you. Get yourself a damn cough button. And let's go from there.
It's all. Oh, I don't even want to get into it. I'm not getting into it, Frank. It's over. It's out of my reach. It's out of my reach. That's all I'll say. I can't read. Anyways. You brought it up. Jonathan Huberdeau last night gets benched. The only thing that Canucks fans like more than seeing their team succeed is the Alberta team sputtering out of the gate. And I think it's safe to say that's happened for both teams. The Calgary Flames last night, Jonathan Huberdeau on the bench, off to a terrible start in Calgary there. Like, what do you make of that whole situation?
It's a tough one. I mean, really, like, I think the biggest thing I'm left with is, where do the Flames go from here? And where does Huberdeau go from here? Because you've got to work on solutions. Like, on a one-time, one-off basis, like, all for Ryan Huska, making this decision to bench Huberdeau. Your team is trying to find a way to get going. They're having a game where they feel good about themselves. They're starting to string together some results. Kadri's got a 4-game point streak. Like, there's a lot of things coming together for the Flames. And then you've got this one guy that's sort of just not connecting. And I don't know why that is. I don't think anyone can put their finger on it. I don't think it's physical. I do think there's a big mental component to it. I think there's some pressure of trying to live up to that contract. And you've got all this coming together, and that's great. But now what? One time, sure. But you can't healthy scratch him. You can't. This is the first year of an $84 million contract. Obviously, there's no viable, outcome where he could find himself playing somewhere else and get a fresh start. You've got to work through this. You got to bring a shovel to work. And that goes for both sides. When I mean, there's not adversarial, but Huberdeau and the Flames, he's got to be better. He's got to put in the work to get back to being a productive player. But the Flames have to also give him some opportunity to get there. Not to say that they haven't to this point, but he's in the 150s or 160s in terms of even strength ice time this season. I'm not saying that he hasn't gotten it, and you could make the argument that he has to earn more. But for the meantime, you have to work together to get to where you want to get to.
Speaking of the other Alberta team, you could tell the Canucks really wanted to twist the knife in on Monday, because last minute to go, already up 5-2, Canucks iced their first power play unit, and they're scoring a pretty tic-tac-toe goal around. And even some of the hits that the Canucks were sort of making in third period, you could tell that there was something extra there. In Edmonton, sort of
First off, wait, I want to stop you because I love that. I freaking love it.
It's the best. It's awesome.
It's awesome.
It was because the Oilers were taking cheap shots at the Canucks players. That's what was happening. It was Darnell Nurse time to shine, where it was garbage time, so he's doing something stupid, and they countered with that.
But it's a mentality. It goes back to what I was saying to you. That's Rick Tocchet in a nutshell. He's all class, but if you get in his way, if you step the wrong way, he'll pound you. And it's the same message over and over again. We're playing for keeps. We're the Canucks. We've arrived. We're here. I don't care that you're the Stanley Cup contender or favorite or trendy pick, or that you've got cup or bust expectations. We've leveled you 3 times this season already, and we're not going anywhere in the Pacific. It's a message sent.
Absolutely. And what I wanted to follow up there was what are the options on the table in terms of what happens next, whether it's coaching change or, a big trade, which might be difficult because they don't have a lot of cap space, especially because, and I'm curious to get your take, in all of this as well. Leon Draisaitl's future sort of looms large as well because, this coming summer, he's going to be a year away and you're going to want to make sure that you're able to convince him to stay. Big picture, where do you think the Oilers are at?
Well, big picture, I don't think the Draisaitl thing comes into effect at all, anywhere in the short term. That's parked way off in the distance. And I've never really had any doubt about what that will unfold like, because look, Draisaitl and McDavid are attached at the hip. There's a reason why he bought a house in Ontario. You see social media harm. They spent all summer together. They're the only place on planet Earth cap wise that they can play together is exactly where they are right now. So I'm not concerned about that. I don't think the Oilers are either. But in the short term, you asked what's on the table. My answer is everything. They made the first move on their emergency checklist, and that was the easiest move, which is send Jack Campbell through waivers, bring up Cal Pickard, see if Campbell can find his game again, and see if somehow the league's worst goaltending can give you a stop, whether it's Skinner, Pickard, the second coming of Jesus, whoever it might be. And that's a huge thing, because it also sends a lightning bolt right up the ass of the rest of the roster. And you know why? It's because they really like Jack Campbell. He's a really popular teammate. And so that's an important sort of first step. And then the next thing is, if this doesn't work, you give it another 2 or 3 games and see what this team looks like at the end of this road swing. And then you've got the coach card to play. I think that's on the table. And if that doesn't work, then you've got a seismic trade opportunity at some point that's foundational franchise shaking. I don't think in this season at any point, unless you're kind of mathematically eliminated, that with the players and horses you have, you leave any stone unturned. That's just my own personal opinion. This is the biggest season, I think, in Oilers franchise history since 1990. It's that big of a deal in terms of expectations and where this team had progressed to and where they're at. Will it get to that point? I don't know. Ask me in a week's time, because I think we're going to have a better idea. As daunting as the math already kind of becomes, and you guys sort of hinted at that, and the pressure that the Oilers are facing. I mean, the real truth of it is they've got some runway to dig themselves out of it, because we do, at least I do, see this team as one that could reel off 10 straight wins and no one would really blink. You just got McDavid and Draisaitl bludgeoning the rest of the league. I mean, we've seen it before, and they closed out last year 14-0-1. They kind of just really mathematically need to get to 500 by the midpoint. But these next 8 games, 7 games to get to the quarter mark could go a really long way in lessening that burden. And that's why you're starting to see things turn now, because I think they've reached a point where they know we can't just sit idle here and hope and pray that this thing's going to turn around. We've got to start doing stuff.
I'd be interested to see how long Ken Holland just gets a free pass from ownership on all this. I wonder.
I don't think there's any real connection there, in the sense that this is Ken Holland's last year. Like, sending him off on a 6-month vacation to close out his contract, it's not going to send shockwaves. And not to say that he's absolved of blame, but there's a new hierarchy in place with Jeff Jackson as their CEO of hockey ops, that it's a joint decision at this point already what happens next, that it's not all just Ken Holland making the decisions. He's got a boss now that's intimately involved in making those calls.
Frank, great stuff as always, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
See you guys, and just tone down the regression talk. There's going to be
saying positive things.
Slight stuff. Just keep it going. Keep your heads on straight.
Awesome. Thanks, Frank.
See you guys.
I'm not going to call him Daddy DFO again. He didn't like that.
I did
Daddy
not see
of
that
DFO.
coming. I didn't. I can see why. Like,
It's a good name.
it's not.
Canucks Conversation with Harmon and Quads every weekday at 2 p.m. Be sure to check it out on the Canucks Army YouTube channel. And if you missed it, go check it out on your favorite podcast catcher app.